Hello everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay podcast, and we're recording this one in Dundee with Gillian Easson, co-founding director of Creative Dundee. Hello Gillian.
Hi.
Anna Stewart, award-winning writer and playwright. Hi Anna.
Hello.
And Gordon Morris, TV and theatre actor who you can currently see on AMC's The Terror.
Hello.
And we might talk a little bit about that at the very end because I'm really interested. I've been having a look at who else is in that. It looks fantastic. But we're here in Dundee, really. I mean, it kind of came from a Twitter conversation that Anna and I had about, there's obviously been a lot recently about the V&A opening up in Dundee. And I knew a little bit, a small bit, because I used to work for Cargo and we were involved with the Dundee International Book Prize. But I also knew that there was other fantastic cultural history and just happenings going on in Dundee. And then I said, well, as Scots Whay, really, we should be, instead of bleating about no one talking about it, we should talk about it. So that's kind of why we're here today. So, I mean, as I say, Anna, we started with a conversation with us, and you very kindly sent us an article, a little bit of homework before we started, which was great. But talk a little bit about that article, because it seemed to me that contained a lot of the history about where Dundee's culture is today.
Okay, well, the article, it was really about the Seagate Printmakers Workshop and Gallery, and how that was the forerunner for the DCA, the Dundee Contemporary Arts in Dundee. My dad happened to work there, and when I was wee, we had international artists sleeping on our settee in our wee council house in Glenclova Terrace. What happened was, when the DCA came along, the Seagate Printmakers Workshop and the Gallery, it was sort of, the Printmakers Workshop was put into the DCA, and but a lot of the sort of existing staff and were, that actual business sort of folded really. And at that time, although it had international artists and artists from all over Scotland, like Davy Mack and everything, come into the gallery, that also, had like local artists, and the Dundee Photographic Society were involved. So really, it was a local and an international institution. But when the DCA came along, what that article was saying was it didn't sort of embrace the same kind of culture. And I thought, oh, that's a shame that something has been lost. People were maybe, at that time, felt a bit excluded. And we were just saying there's not a lot online about it because it was pre-internet. So, but it was quite interesting to see that, to read the sort of political history of that, and how the DCA was formed, and what then happened to the existing culture and the workers who were part of that artistic community.
So it was an interesting article, partly because it looked not only at the history of Dundee contemporary arts, but also the importance of funding within it. So, Gillian, if we can go to you, is Dundee contemporary art, is that almost seen like a year zero for art culture in Dundee, or is that too simple?
I think it's probably too simple. I think there's always been a strong cultural scene in Dundee, and it comes from the mills, and it comes from singing and dancing and the cinemas, the many cinemas across the city. The Rep, of course, existed before DCA, and things like Witch's Blood, which was a 2D theatre production across the city, with community actors at the very heart of that, 200 or 300 actors taking part. That was my first kind of cultural memory in the city. So it
was huge.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah.
And being kind of bussed around, taking in the sort of sights and the smells of that particular period within Dundee, it was incredible. So I think there's always criticisms about kind of where Dundee's making its investment, and how you balance that kind of international and local. And if we're using DCA, I think it does an incredible job at weaving both the local and international through its many kind of programmes and activities. But yeah, Dundee's always had that kind of really gritty DIY cultural scene. It's not had mass investment, but it's always had cultural strategies. So I think we're on our third decade of having cultural strategies in place, and it's not just that strategy, but it's actually people making things happen. And yeah, just that kind of culture of, if it's not there, make it happen. And that's what I did. I kind of left my well-paid job to go and kind of see what Creative Dundee could become, with no intention of making it an organisation. It was a blog for 5 years, but I saw a gap that I felt I could perhaps fill, and here we are on a podcast speaking about culture in Dundee. So yeah.
Gordon, you were involved talking about Dundee Rep. I mean, that's a great reputation, and it had a kind of certainly Scottish-wide reputation for producing great theatre. So give us a little bit about the history of that and your involvement in it as well.
Funnily enough, my first ever involvement with Dundee Rep was when I first decided to get into acting. I'd never acted before in my life. I'd never done anything. I was working in NCR in Dundee, making cash card machines, and I was walking through the town one day, and I met a guy called Steve Merton, a guy from the top of the hill in Dundee, who's quite a well-known actor from Dundee. And I asked him what he was doing. I'd trained as a bricklayer with Steve, and I was asking him what he was up to, and he said, and he was a bit kind of reticent. He was kind of, I said, what is it? He said, I'm actually training to be an actor. And I thought, you know what, Steve, that sounds brilliant. I'd like to give that a go. So he went, well, come on, I'll take you along to the rep then. So we walked along to the rep, to the community department, and obviously Steve was quite well known there anyway. And I went in, and I did a couple of little things with them, and I got a part in the next play. It was actually one of the biggest parts in the next kind of community theatre play. And then I got into Dundee College, and yeah, it was just amazing. And Dundee Rep for me, it was so. I thought, because I was just a guy from Douglas who worked in a factory and had been a bricklayer and driven vans and all these different things, I didn't think it was for me.
Yeah.
And then I actually found out it was, and I was loving it. When I went in there, it was so inclusive. And I can always remember one of the guys, Stephen Stenning, who was at the community theatre at the time and who was running it. And he turned up at my door one day and said, "Hi Gordon, just to say, unfortunately rehearsals have been cancelled tonight. We didn't have your number and we didn't want you to turn up there." And I thought,
brilliant.
Up to that stage, nobody did. I just worked in jobs where it was just you did your job and that was it. You just went home. And suddenly people were turning up and saying, "Oh, we didn't want you that." So, it's just great that you're involved in this, and we don't want you to be sort of disheartened in any way by turning up. And then that was it. Then I went there, and since then I became friends with James Brining, who was the artistic director at the Rep. James actually played football with me and my friends on a Monday night, and so I got to see a bit of the workings of the Rep from his side, and it was just really interesting just going and sitting in his office some days and just having a chat with him about all these different things that were going on, and just to see how intensely proud he was of this whole place as well. And I used to go in and just sit with him, and then I'd go and watch rehearsals, and I have only done a few little things at the Rep, because my kind of career went in a different way. I seem to have done more television work since then, but I have done little bits and bobs there, and hopefully at some point I will do more. But as I say, my very first time was 1998. That was I think that might have been the first time.
That was the year, Gordon.
Yeah, that may have been the year I first walked into the Rep for the very first time. And since then, I'm in there. I go in there at least once a week, even just go and sit and have a coffee, or just to sit, because I just love the atmosphere. Yeah. I just love going into that place, and there's a feel, it's an excitement.
So this idea of having the community involved seems a really important one in what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And that goes back, when you're suggesting, Gillian, that went back further into things like folk music and telling, and also you obviously had DC Thompson in there as well. How do you balance that with something that Anna said about an international outlook as well?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I suppose we're all from Dundee, I think, so and that's quite unusual actually, because there's a lot of folks from all over the place working in Dundee, and that's what I love about it. So I just want to kind of say something about the fact that although a lot of what we do is all because of connections to each other, and we were having a joke about being kind of one person removed, and Gordon and I don't know each other, so that's great to always meet somebody from here that you don't know. However, I think two of our team are from France and Brazil, and they often speak about like how inclusive and welcoming Dundee is to outsiders and people that are coming to the city. So I think Dundee's always looked out. It's always had to work out the way, and as a kind of shipping, fishing, all the kind of industries that we've had of the past. And then being a kind of university city of having two great universities and a great college that have seen a lot of folks internationally pass through and stay. Like so many people you meet that you're like, oh yeah, I moved here because my girlfriend was studying here, but I love it, and now we're staying. So I think it's that balance.
It's so interesting the amount of people I meet involved in all sorts of the arts who have some connection to Dundee educationally. Whether it's in, they studied art here or they went to university here and got involved in arts that way. And we're in an area where the university is close by to the Rep, to the contemporary arts. How important is that collaboration with the universities and colleges?
I mean, I think that we take it for granted a little bit. I think in Dundee, it's amazing when you're seeing people from outside Dundee will enthuse about it and say how wonderful it is, and you've got to sometimes sit and think, yeah, you're right enough actually, because it's just we are so used to having these wonderful institutions on our doorstep, and you walk up the Perth Road and you see all these people from all over the world wandering around, all looking so happy, and I love that. I love seeing that. But as I say, sometimes I can be in a taxi, and the taxi driver will be a Dundee guy, and he'll be moaning to me about everything. And you're thinking, come on, mate, it's not really that. It's not that at all. And I'm trying to go back at him and say, well, actually, and then you'll sit with somebody like maybe a James Brining, who was from down south, and he's sitting there going, oh, this and that is just fantastic.
I think if you've never lived away as well, sometimes like my partner, he's from Dundee and never moved out of Dundee, but I had lived away for 8 years, and he was sometimes had a bit of a downer on Dundee, but if you've been away and then come back, I think that you realise, and where I studied down in Devon was Dartington, and sadly the university lost its funding and they closed, and I think that when you see that, you see the effect that has on a town or a village.
Sure.
You think, God, we really have to make sure that the universities are okay, because how much they give to a city or a town or a village, it is important, that connection, and that is how it becomes international as well. That's how you make a wee Devonshire community sort of an international community, is by inviting people from all over the world.
But inviting people from all over the place that they're based, because it's not just about the pocket of Dundee that we're, speaking about the West End kind of area. And Dundee still has a big challenge, but like Glasgow, in terms of being this, it's often called a city of two halves, or so we have got still massive poverty, deprivation, health issues that we're trying to kind of tackle as a city through culture. And it's a big kind of risk for a city council to be behind as well. But they've always believed in it, and most recently, I guess, with trying to bid to become a European capital of culture, but being told at the last minute that none of the UK cities could bid.
Is that down to because of Brexit?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
So 3 days before we were due to get on a plane to pitch, DCMS and the European Commission said no deal. We're not, even though they'd obviously stated, and it was on their website, and obviously all the cities competing had been told, a couple of years in advance that they were definitely going to get to bid. So that was totally scuppered. But Dundee being Dundee will always kind of pick itself up and do something bigger and better. And that's what we did with the UK City of Culture. We've since become a UNESCO City of Design, the only UK city to have that status. And one of the big things we're looking at there is kind of social justice, is healthcare. It's not design as a beautiful product.
It's practical design as well.
Absolutely, it's about how do you design better systems, and the council, have taken that really seriously in terms of thinking about how they deliver services. It's in their interest, of course, but yeah, design of the intangible things that connect us and that connect the city in its broadest sense, not just about the waterfront.
When you were away, Anna, for 8 years, how did you view what was happening in Dundee, or did that kind of, did you not know? Was it kind
I
of...
didn't know. I felt kind of, whenever I came back up, I thought, oh, what's this? What's happened here? This never used to be like this. It was just, you just saw changes. Every time I was visiting, there was just more and more change. And like places I had never been to. And even still now, I think, I never knew that was here. And it had happened in the time that I had been away. And I went to visit the Verdant Works recently. I was like, why have I never been here? But it had sort of happened. I left when I was like 18, so it sort of happened in that time.
Yeah.
And then you're like, this is brilliant,
Totally.
I love the Verdant Works. I only went there for the first time a couple of years ago as well, and it was awesome.
So what is the Verdant Works?
It's an old jute mill. An old jute mill that's been refurbished, and it's stunning. It's amazing.
It tells the story, doesn't it, of people connected to the jute industry, and has school rooms set up and all like classrooms.
It was just immense, absolutely immense.
And I went in with my wee boy. There's a man in the kludgy, and when you go in, he goes, shouts, "Get out, get out!" And he was forever running in and out.
Got me as well.
The kludgy.
Man. I actually jumped when that.
But that is that a charitable organisation?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
so.
absolutely.
So that is a sort of paid museum. So that might be another reason. I suppose the McManus, you'll go into it's a free museum and it's right on your doorstep. Whereas you have to kind of have a wee look to find the Verdant Works, and it is. But once you've bought your ticket, it lasts for a whole year. But that is a charitable funded museum, I think.
Yeah. But it's well worth a visit.
Yeah.
That brings me to talk about actual physical buildings. It seems to me that they are very important and fit for purpose in Dundee. Is that a fair thing to say?
So a friend was visiting from Edinburgh the other day, and she runs a similar organisation to Creative Dundee, and she just couldn't get over the amount of space we had.
Space, that's exactly it.
Yeah. So the space we are based, which is just across the road, it's called the Vision Building. It's got a long history. It used to be a factory being turned into where creative industry businesses should be based. Kind of failed. I'm not sure.
I think it was Ariel Fleming.
Oh, was it?
I think so.
Sort of failed for the first few years when the economic recession was happening, but a new landlord took it over and kind of looking at interesting ways of building it now. So it's got like two of the largest games companies in Dundee based there, but also we're in this kind of co-working space with lots of other small independent creative folks. And she was just like, wow, we just would not get this in Edinburgh. So I think for us, again, we probably take for granted the spaces that exist in Dundee, the civic spaces, the green spaces, the incredible libraries, and the provision right across the city.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's 13 libraries in Dundee.
Ooh,
yes.
I never knew that.
Including a mobile library.
I've seen that one a few times.
Yes. So we're very lucky that we've got all those libraries still open and still staffed.
I mean, because that's a major. Certainly, I know from friends of mine in Glasgow, who, the plight of libraries is one which is really worried. People really worry about.
Yeah.
Would that suggest a kind of strong literary background in Dundee, which continues to this day?
Yeah, I think so. I think you see a lot of people coming in, and they've been coming into the library for 40 years. They're readers. Mm-hmm. People in Dundee are readers, I think. Crime, they love it.
That's the same everywhere. Don't worry about that. That's a whole different podcast talking about why Scots love their crime fiction.
They love it. But also we're doing different things in the libraries. And that's sort of helping us. And
you're now doing downloadable books as well, aren't you? In the library?
Yeah, we do.
Which is great.
We've purchased on behalf of the public, so they're free if you're a library member, and we're also doing things now to help people with their CVs and all of that's kind of happening. And I'm trying to think.
I think it's a library that's kept up with its times, you know. Yeah. I'm a wee bit biased. My mum worked in local history, as you'll know, Anna, for many years, and I remember just going in, like being plonked there after school every night and kind of playing on, is it the microfiche machines? I don't know if they're still there, but the internet's probably replaced a lot of that. But what I love about our libraries here is that you know, there's kind of maker facilities sort of weaving themselves into some of the libraries. There's job search skills and and the local history department is, you know,
old newspapers. I'm a sucker for the old newspapers. I can go in there, if I've got a couple of hours to spare, I'll go wander in and pick up just a random year and sit down, and it's just so interesting. I could sit for so long reading those.
And the thing is that people don't often know that they can access that information, you know. It's like if you want to know something about, like we had an incident in our family. My granddad years ago tried to save these two boys who sadly drowned in the 1950s, and he was given a medal for it. So I went in with my mum and said, we'll see if we can find it. And Deirdre, straight away, there it is there. You know, that's all the information you need. And people sort of come in and might say, I was wondering if I could get something, their granddad, it might be their 90th birthday. Could I get... Yes, of course you can get that. That's your information. It all belongs to you. Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, and I think there's this myth that you can find anything you want online these days, and you can't. No. There's lots of stuff that you really have to still go and put in the physical work and
it's
find
so much
out.
better, especially if it's an old newspaper, and it's actually, you open it up and there it is. You can touch it, you know, rather than it's online, great, you can read it, but when it's sitting there and smell it, I love that.
And we've got which we were speaking about earlier, the Lamb collection in local history, which was donated to the libraries, and it's photographs, you know, dating back. You know, you could just see all of Dundee throughout.
Is it called Photopolis or something?
They've got it online as well, but you can actually come in and have a look at the card indexes and find the physical photographs as well. So it's definitely worth having.
So it's like a photographic history
of Dundee.
It sounds like Dundee's industrial history is something that's still kind of celebrated and looked at. It's quite interesting coming from Glasgow, where it's almost too dramatic for people to do. You know, like the buildings on the Clyde side aren't really used for anything. They're just left empty or have been knocked down or whatever. Would you say that's right, that Dundee kind of... There's more of a celebration of its industry?
I think people do celebrate. I think, you know, the jute industry, we were gifted a lot of things like the parks and the Caird Hall, you know, so I think there is that legacy still stands and people remember that. But equally, there are sore points, you know, for people, you know, Timex and, you know, but then culturally, you know, we use that and process that through plays and songs, and that's one way that you can kind of heal that. And then things have moved on. We've got other industries through those industries, sort of through NCR and things. You know, we've got the computer industry and games. So.
They've evolved. They have evolved.
And I think what I love about Dundee at the moment is that a lot of those former industrial buildings are being used for creative and cultural uses. So you've got DCA, Vision, Generator projects, WASP Studios. You know, you could keep going. A number of buildings that have been sort of repurposed as creative spaces, and I think, you know, our colleagues said this recently. The brilliant Annie Mars. Who said that, like, the V&A is just a kind of comma, it's not a full stop in Dundee's journey, because I think a lot of people are seeing the V&A as being the start and the end of Dundee, but I guess what we're all trying to say is that's just, you know, there's more to come. And so one of the developments that I'm kind of excited about, if it comes, is Westward Works, which is DC Thompson's old former print press factory down beside Verdant Works. And that is a huge space, you know, bigger than Glasgow Tramway in terms of a cultural venue potential. And
is that being used for stuff? Is there
yeah,
stuff
so it's been used. Lots of people have been using it for the last couple of years as the design festival space, but also for like pop-up things that have happened. But there's a long-term plan to kind of try and create that into something much more. And so that I think that's the thing with Dundee. It's kind of trying to use its older spaces in a way that that it could just turn away from them and keep building the new things. Although we'd do a bit of that as well.
Yeah.
But so that's what I'm excited about.
So when you decided that Creative Dundee was something that you wanted to start up, what was it you thought, the gap that you wanted to fill? What did you think was the problem?
So I suppose I came back to Dundee as well thinking I'd never stay. It was the year the DCA opened, and then I started to see something happening, but it was a good few years before I probably actually went in the doors, but also before I just was not connected to the city. And so it was a bit of that. It was a bit of I wanted to be more connected. It was a bit of I was fed up of hearing particularly lecturers actually telling their students that they had to fly south to get jobs and opportunities. So I knew that there was lots going on. So the blog for the 5.5 years was just speaking about exhibitions, events that were happening that were totally under the radar. And then it kind of snowballed from there into events, and then thinking, what's happening here? We're catalysing something to happen, and it's very kind of cross-disciplinary because I suppose a lot of the time games developers hang out together and maybe don't meet visual artists or architects or dancers or theatre. So it was that meshing of people in the same room, which I think Creative Dundee started to do.
And someone who had been in Dundee their whole life, as you say, you maybe didn't engage with the theatre until Dundee Rep, but did you engage with other aspects of culture and art? Were you?
Do you know, I would say my engagement with the cultural side of things in Dundee were the McManus galleries. I would go and I could, again, I was one of those kids that could go and just spend hours just wandering around. I love the fact that they still have the boat that's in there, you know, the canoe. That takes me back. Every time I see this canoe, it takes me back to being about 9, just and wishing I could get in that canoe.
There's a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the Kelvin Hall.
Yeah.
In my head, it's massive, and you go in, it's about the same height as Gordon. It's
very big.
Gordon is huge, as you say. Absolutely, that is often I think where kids do have their first connection with culture is in galleries and libraries as well.
Yeah, and again, and the library. That was my. I mean, I would be the gallery and the library. The gallery is one other thing in that museum which it takes me back whenever I go, and I can still stand and look at it. Is they have like a miniature of Dundee from the 1890s or 1880s, whatever it is. And I used to, again as a kid, I so wanted to be able to shrink myself. I just want to be in there. And I still think that's it. Just if only I could just shrink just a little bit. But so my first probably cultural experiences in Dundee were definitely museums, going into the library and just reading. And I would say theatre definitely came a lot later for me, only because it wasn't a thing for us. I was from Douglas, you know what I mean? So Whitfield originally moved to Douglas when I was a kid, completely working class family. You know, nobody even spoke about theatre really in the house at the time. It wasn't something I thought about. And I was quite disappointed. When I went to Craigie High, and they didn't do any acting at all at Craigie High. There's no drama. And then I was mentoring a young girl from Craigie High a few years back, and she was really into acting. And so I went up to Craigie to watch her do a little show with the rest of her class in this drama group, and it was brilliant. It was outstanding, and I thought, this is it. You know, they're getting a grounding now. They're getting to see that they'll want to go and see plays. They'll want to, you know, and hopefully that will really help. I just didn't get that. It was just a little bit later for me. But I got there in the end.
I mean, we spoke about the kind of secondary education, but in schools, is that situation changing? Is the kind of arts and culture in schools changing?
Although it's a struggle again right now, because obviously with cutbacks, what gets cut back first? It's always the arts. It's always the arts that go first. So that's a bit of a struggle. But as I say, the Craigie High drama department, when I saw it, was just wonderful.
Brilliant.
And I think, I think from the fact that it came from nothing for me, there was nothing there at all. And then suddenly to go back and see them embracing this, I just think, yes, that's what it's all like. Come on.
Well, we didn't have drama. I kept asking and asking, can we have the drama? Higher on, but no, because they had the summer show every year, so that was the musical that replaced that. You didn't need to learn it.
But I think it has got a lot better, and there's so many activities across the city that are happening. In May there was a big design parade across the city where wee teeny tots, primary school aged pupils were working with local designers across the city and to come up with a parade thing. So it could be either a float or it could be like all dressed up. And it was brilliant. And they kind of all paraded around the city centre, kind of culminating at both the city square and McManus. And I don't know how many kids there was involved with that, but a lot. And so there's always opportunities. And I think things like the Maggie's Penguin parade.
I was just going to ask you about that. I had a wonder about before I came round, and I kept seeing these very colourful penguins.
So we had Urbilly last year. We've got penguins this year. Sorry, Urbilly was maybe 2 years ago actually. But, to time in with school holidays, it's brilliant. So I think there's a lot of hard work being done behind the scenes in terms of the education and culture coming together to kind of...
And they've got the nurseries and schools doing the ones that go into the libraries. So my wee boy, at his nursery, they did one, and it's in Lochee Library. So I've still to go in and see. But apparently his teacher said, well, he'll point to the bit that he did. But what I wanted to say about the boats in the McManus. My father-in-law, he was a shipbuilder, and his dad too, and brothers, so it was within the family. And he was telling our son that the little model boats, they used to build those. So some of them are the ones that are in the McManus. So I think that is a way... he would take Anders in to see them. That's a way that you can engage the community with the sort of cultural history of a city or a town, is by including things like that. And I think that with the V&A, their first exhibition is going to be about the cruise liners, and if they could include something about the shipbuilding, I think people would really want to come in and see that. But also things like when we're building cultural spaces in Dundee, if you took 10 school leavers who were going to do an apprenticeship somewhere else, but said to them, come and do it in this cultural space and we'll fund you to do that. And if they continue to live in Dundee throughout their years of living in Dundee, they'll say to their children, I made that. I made this cultural space. I was part of that. And that would be a way that you'll get the local community to keep bringing their children, their grandchildren in, and keep them involved in cultural institutions within a city or a town.
I think that's right. I think the problem comes, and it happened, I think, in Glasgow, is when there's a kind of disconnect and people stop going to these things, or taking their kids to these things, or they think, well...
If you can involve people, workers, if you can give people a job, and not a kind of 0-hour contract, one job broken into 3, if you can give them an actual employment within cultural institutions, then people will cherish them. And I hope that that's what happens.
I mean, unfortunately, a lot of it does come down to money in the end. And in terms of difficulties in funding, Gordon, you said that the first thing to go is often arts funding. You've seen that, right across the country. Is it getting increasingly difficult to fund things? It's an obvious question, I suppose, but yes, everyone nods.
That's it. Next question.
So do you have to find more creative, to you, Gillian, more creative ways of doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're in a kind of unique situation that after 5 years of doing it as a voluntary thing, and then having really tiny little bits of cash to keep us going over the next 3 or 4 years, we became what's called a Creative Scotland regularly funded organisation in April, which is a big deal. So that means 3 years of funding rather than year to year. So Dundee only had 3 RFOs, they're called. And so we've gone from being really like that grassroots, not sure if we're going to be around next year, to knowing that we'll be around for the next 3 years. And that ability to long-term plan and to give our team, our very small team, proper contracts is really important. So we're getting kind of stuck into a lot of the things that are happening across the city in terms of the future of the city. But we're also aware of that we're now in this, as I say, unique position where we want to make sure that we don't forget where we've come from and that we're helping everybody else who I know are on really precarious levels of funding. So yeah, it's definitely not an answer to your question, but we're well aware of it in Dundee, and cuts have happened already. And yeah, I think what is good, and I don't want to sound political because I'm not particularly, but there seems to be a real clear interest in culture and the arts, so we just need to make sure that translates into funds.
And do you think being a smaller city and what you've already said, quite a tight artistic community or cultural community, that benefits that? Because people are supporting, you've got writers supporting, theatre supporting, all.
Yeah, we had a PhD student with us for 3 months who, again, worked for many years before he kind of found his way in academia. And we challenged him with this idea about how inclusive is Dundee and what is the unique thing about Dundee, because we often speak about the connectedness and the collaboration and all that. It's easy to talk about that, it's not so easy to do. And he certainly found that there is this spirit of collaboration rather than competition. And I think somebody else recently said that when the tide rises for one, it should rise for everyone. And I think that's what we're trying to work with in Dundee, is that if I help you out, it's going to benefit us all. So
and I think having worked a little bit in Scottish independent publishing, which again is a small and shrinking scene, that there is that thing of, well, we're all in it together, so let's try and promote each other.
Yeah.
And in terms of publishing in Dundee, or the literary side of things, I mean, is that struggling as well? Is there?
Yeah.
Because I know that the International Book Prize stopped, didn't it, in 2017? Yeah. I don't know if that's starting up again in 2018.
I don't think.
Okay, no, I'm no longer involved, so I mean.
No, but I think that's been quite a blow, really. And I think there's going to be a new cultural officer at the university, so that might open up new projects, new things.
What's Erin's new role within the library?
She's a local historian, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But she does work on poetry and song from Dundee as well. So her role is quite new. So I think she's still establishing herself within that role, but more is probably going to happen within local history. I think
there's some good nights. I'm trying to think what nights there are, but there are quite a few kind of evening events that kind of happen.
Yes, there is a sort of open mic night out on the Perth Road.
So the Screevers.
Yeah, there's a new playwriting thing that's happening.
Yeah, John McCann's Screeve Night.
So that's a new thing. But I think there probably could be more happening.
Absolutely.
And, there definitely could be more.
Similar to that, just in general, what's the kind of music scene like in Dundee?
Well, we've just had the Blues Festival.
Oh yeah, that's just what I mean. I mean, Dundee's always had its reputation for turning out good bands. There's quite a few good bands I've played in the area, and I'll have evenings where I've had a few drinks and I decide to play just all Dundee bands on my YouTube.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think for me, we're always really proud. Dundee we had a play called Balgay Hill a few years back at Dundee Rep, and it was actually the last time I was involved at the Rep, and I was the Dundonian dialect coach. Because there were a few actors who weren't from Dundee, and it was about Billy Mackenzie. The play was related to Billy Mackenzie, And they did a fantastic thing, which I remember, in the actual foyer of Dundee Rep. It was, because Dundonians always do this, you've always got a connection to somebody, especially Billy Mackenzie. Everybody in Dundee has a connection to Billy Mackenzie. And they asked, what's your connection to Billy Mackenzie? Come in and write it down. And my connection to Billy Mackenzie was the fact that my dad used to have pigeons. And Billy Mackenzie's dad, Jim Mackenzie, had pigeons as well. And my dad got his pigeons from Jim. And I had to go up to the house and went in there one day and they took me out to the pigeon loft to get them. And that was my then connection to Billy Mackenzie, was through Jim Mackenzie's pigeons. But still, it's a Billy Mackenzie connection, which I'm very proud of.
Dog walking for me.
All right.
I used to see Billy with these two whippets and I was like walking the dog along Arbroath Road.
Loved it. But yes, but that was Dundee's. I mean, there are so many good bands that come out of Dundee. I mean, Danny Wilson, two guys from Douglas, Gary Clark and Kit Clark, who stayed not too far along the road from me in Douglas, which again was always a great. Being from Douglas, we used to walk up the road and go, Danny Wilson stayed.
Absolutely.
My dad's van was still there for years after they left us.
And in terms of venues, are there live music venues?
That is a challenge. So I think the thing that's going on in Dundee is the sort of the routes to professionalised practice are really challenging. So yes, there's lots going on, and you can go into Clarkie's every night and kind of hear a brilliant band. But actually, to become a professional musician, it's quite challenging, as it is anywhere, but particularly in Dundee. So again, there's lots of work going on around developing those pathways and a sort of music strategy that's helping with that. There's a musician award as well, which goes a small way, but an important way to kind of helping that happen. But venues are the biggest challenge, and I know that there's lots of kind of, not consultation, but lots of kind of engagement done with music venues across the city, and they're struggling. So like everywhere else.
But I did the music course. There was a music course started when I was a teenager, and I did that after I left school. But I don't think that that's happening now. I think that's been taken. Perth always had their course, but I think Dundee's course is now in Perth, which is quite sad.
But then there's a lot of there is a lot of audio design work that's done, and it kind of links to the games sector as well. And there's a lot of interest and activity, like actually composers and things within the games community, and kind of freelancing as well. And Gardyne campus, Dundee and Angus College's campus, has incredible audio equipment. And there's 3 Sound of Dundee CDs, which I don't know if you've come across, but they were handed out free over the last 3 years. And it's actually somebody that's in our team now that did it in his previous role, but collated 3 brilliant kind of CDs again to try and showcase what's happening in Dundee's music scene.
Yeah, I mean, you might not know the answer to this, but are there? I know in other cities in Scotland, really small independent record labels are starting up, and that's kind of re-energising the music scene in these cities.
Make That a Take is the one that stands out for me, and they've been doing a lot around music and mental health issues, and putting on brilliant nights, and really trying to advance that kind of conversation through music. I'm sure there's a lot more, and I'll get beaten up for getting them. But
if you get in touch with me later, I can put links to everyone that you forget about. That's easily done. Again, this is, I'm probably stating the bleeding obvious, but difficult to be an actor these days as well, and continue to work.
I'm really lucky because Dundee has one of the largest teaching hospitals in Europe.
Right.
And I am up in Wales quite a lot, being angry, collapsing, depressed. This is just in real life every day.
It's the best place for me to be.
But yes, so for the medical students, we're really lucky in Dundee, in that every one of us who are based in the Dundee area, we've been up there. In fact, Anna's been up doing stuff.
It was terrible.
Anna had a hard time.
It was awful. He gave me a scene to do, and I had to repeat this because it was the exams, for the students. So you really had to be on it because you didn't want to let them down, you know. Sure. And it just goes to show you how much they learn, because they all got it right. You know, they all. But I had an illness, and I had to repeat the same illness. I would say about 80 times.
Wow.
Could have been, it was an Oscar day.
And it was really difficult sitting on the seat.
Those are the hardest days.
It was quite depressing.
It can be, but you know, those are long days. When it's the Oscar exams, they'll get in tons of actors. We all come in from all over, and we go up there. And it's hard work for the Oscar exams. Most of the other days it's great. You go in for a few hours and it's a full group session. They sit down with you and they just go through and you play a scenario for them, and they ask the questions, and they're allowed to learn how to be doctors, and they can take time out at any time, and they can ask their tutor, you know, they can ask their friends for help. They can take turns about, and it's great fun. Those are the best fun. Anna's never managed to do any of those yet, but those are great fun to do. So that actually, as an actor, that's keeping me going, because as any actor will tell you, as anything in the arts, you're not doing it all the time. So you're working on building sites and in pubs and in, you know, whereas.
That's one of the great things about the Rep Ensemble, because those actors have been able to raise families here. You know, they've got that security because they knew that they've got permanent contracts as actors in the ensemble. So, and that doesn't exclude from other actors coming in and out, but they've got this core ensemble of people, and you know, they're very, very good. People want to go and see them.
They're brilliant. So as I say, for us in Dundee, we're lucky with that. We're lucky as actors to have that up at Nine Wells, which is great.
It's interesting from what you're all saying. You know, you all for some different lengths of time were away and came back, and you know, you're talking about people who have come from overseas and stayed and raised their families here and still been involved. And it does sound like the artistic community is a really strong one, and who are doing it and not forget what other people think, we're going to do it anyway. But is there a sense of that in a way? Because it's, you know, people concentrate in Scotland in the Central Belt, or sound like people in the Central Belt do. Would you say that's a fair thing?
Yeah, I think as well, because we're not, you know, Glasgow or Edinburgh, I think it's like anybody can join in. You know, if something's happening, we are very mindful of the community as well. Whenever professional, you know, companies and creative organisations are very mindful that they exist in a kind of small community of, so anybody can join in, and I think there is that kind of freedom. Like the Rep, going into the community, taking their shows round the community centres, you know, that's. And the reducing the ticket prices for those things, you know.
And there's a lot of outreach, like all the cultural venues in the city, McManus, DCA, Scottish Dance Theatre, Dundee Rep, all have outreach programmes and brilliant learning teams. So there's a lot of work going on there. But I think we do get forgotten about. And it's been really interesting over the last year, being at the top of all these different league tables, Lonely Planet, Forbes, I don't know. It actually gave me a jittery eye one day, just like the level of expectation that's been placed on the city, you know, post-September this year. It's like, you know, for folks like us, it's quite challenging. But we know that everybody will get a good welcome when they actually finally arrive. So we always love the people that have come before September, because often the response is, oh yeah, it'll be great, you know, come once V&A's open. So it's a funny old time. If I had more time, I would love to do an event the week before the V&A opened, which we did one a few years ago, which was bringing back those that have been involved in all the cultural transformations to just speak about them, because it's really appealing to students and older folk and everybody in between, and I think that needs reminded. So these opportunities to kind of speak about the heritage of the city in terms of culture and the arts are really important. We'll be there with like big open arms, but we want them to come past the waterfront, and that includes journalists and those with a really kind of loud voice and platform to be able to spread the word. Talking about journalism, obviously, you know, part of the city's heritage is based around journalism. How is that covered by the local press, whether it's
papers, TV? I mean, what's the relationship?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah,
They're really supportive of what's been happening over the years, and increasingly so. And I think local papers get a hammering a lot of time for just reporting on negative stuff, and but actually they've been along with us on that journey of becoming a cultural destination. I think and we've got representation of STV and BBC also here. Obviously very small teams, but again quite supportive, and will turn up if you send them a press release or something. And then different outlets, like one of the kind of a brilliant addition to the city has been Dundee Culture, which is a kind of Facebook page but also a website led by, I think now Andrew, sorry if you're listening to this, but I think Andrew's now 17 or 18, but he was 13 when he first started it up. So, and he's got a huge voice, in terms of media following. That thing about people just getting stuck in and kind of the city allowing people to be that person. Because I remember I had to get in contact because we thought it was a much older adult who set up this website, and the council asked me to make contact with him to see, how we could connect.
So meet in the
and
pub.
His dad, his kind of dad replied to say, my son's 13, and we were all like, what? It's so professional looking. So rather than close down that, it was like, well, let's get him in, let's kind of mentor him along the way. So
fantastic. I should say as well that we're recording this in Ryan McLeod's podcast studio. Chit Chat podcasts, I believe he does, and he's done
absolutely.
I think 60 odd of them with people.
Totally.
And they are all kind of Dundee focused, and they're artists in Dundee. You should check them out, definitely. So what you mentioned that the V&A is not a full stop, it's just part of the journey. What, for everyone here, are the hopes, in the future for what's happening?
So for me, it would be about making sure everyone's along on that journey with us. So it's absolutely about the whole city being, kind of like the whole city having their culture represented. So we did this project last year, which went around all the community festivals and community centres to find out what culture means to people across the city without using the word culture. And we got some really interesting bits and pieces back from that around where culture's happening, and I hope that the city's working on that to kind of advance culture.
What kind of things did they say out of interest? I'm always looking for alternative words
absolutely.
to culture.
No, well, that's the thing. I mean, we started by asking, where would you spend your perfect day? How would you spend your perfect day? And a lot of it was about social activities, obviously with friends and family. Parks came up as a huge thing. Dog walking, lots of dog walking. But it was all very much, there was lots of outdoor activity, but there's wrestling that happens in Ardler Community Centre and 300 people turn up to watch that. And so I think we've got to make sure that we're kind of definitely inclusive of everybody's cultures.
I would hope that, reiterating what Gillian said, engaging with the community culturally as well, I do hope that the V&A brings some kind of sustainable employment for people, because I think there's a lot riding on it, so I would hope that happens, and that the exhibitions sort of represent the community as well. I would also quite like there to be some kind of writing thing involved with, because that's my area of interest.
Of course, no.
Selfish.
Selfish, just pure selfish.
Is there a literary festival? Is there
the Dundee, literary festival? So I'm not sure, because of the book prize, what's happening with
this
the festival
year.
now.
I believe there's going to be Festival of the Future, which will be across different art forms. So literature, design, arts, and others. And it looks quite an exciting programme. I've seen a sort of draft of it. So that's good. Kind of
Because the festival was, great. We had some great people coming in the past. So I was hoping that would continue.
I just want to see people coming from all over the world and just seeing what Dundee's
Yeah.
got. You know, just coming and seeing it's a lovely place. We're situated perfectly. Everything's here. You know, if you want to go to the beach, go to the beach in Broughty Ferry. If you want to go and see a fantastic view of Dundee, go to the top of the Law. You can go into the countryside and there's some stunning scenery around the place. Come and see, but let the V&A be. You come here to the V&A, but then spread out from there and see everything else. See the city centre. Come into the West End. Just wander about in Dundee and take it all in. And that's what I hope happens. Dundee had such a horrible time for such a long time, and this last 20 odd years anyway, it's been getting better and better and better. And I want people to see that, because I'm totally proud of Dundee, and I enthuse about Dundee wherever I am. And it's honestly, people must just think, oh, shut up, man.
You're allowed to. That's why you've been asked on here.
And I can't help it. So I just want to see people just coming into Dundee and wandering about. I was up in Pitlochry a couple of days ago, and Pitlochry was buzzing.
Yes,
absolutely buzzing. There was people from all I heard were American accents and foreign accents, and these beautiful big bikes were going through the town with all these foreign number plates on them. I thought, you know what? Just come a little bit further down the road and you're going to have a fantastic time as well. I should have had a placard. I really should have.
Well,
police would have stopped me. But
I was in Liverpool and I saw all what happened down there at their docks, and that started with the Tate, and then everything that sort of spiralled from that. I thought, and I was saying to some of the people who I was meeting, and they were talking about it. I was saying, well, we're getting the V&A in Dundee, and I hope that we could, use Liverpool as an example of what could happen. It's really buzzing down there. Totally. And all the they were saying, because of the Beatles, obviously, there's a festival every few minutes, down there. They've got one festival after the other. And really, that could be happening in Dundee.
Absolutely. Easily. And anytime there's any kind of European delegations to the city, we're often kind of brought in to help show them around. And the reaction they have from going from never heard of it before in my life to this is really great, I'm definitely going to come back, it's just fantastic. And
heartwarming.
If you've not got Dundee issued Sunny Dundee sunglasses, we need to get you a pair. So these yellow rimmed sunglasses that are kind of not council issued, but they've definitely sprung a life of their own. And also we've got a 99 Things Guide to the City, which is a kind of crowdsourced guide which we just basically ask people to share what they loved about the city and where they love to see it happen. And what maybe some people notice is that out of the 99 things, V&A is number 99. So there's 98 other things to go and see and do in the city.
Even the parks, like Camperdown Park, it's just great. And so if you've got a family, it's a great place to come.
Yeah.
Be nice if
and it's always the sunny in Dundee, isn't it?
It is always
the sunniest city in Scotland, so it had to be said. Somebody had to say it. Officially, it's the sunniest city in Scotland.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to leave it. So I just want to say thanks to Gillian.
Thank you.
Thanks to Anna.
Thanks.
And thanks to Gordon. And also thanks to Ryan for letting us record here. And come visit Dundee, definitely. And we'll be back soon talking to someone completely different. Cheers.